Hello everyone, welcome back to another stream on Fantasy Football Scout. As usual, today we're going to go through my team selection for Game Week 17. We're going to take a look at how I'm getting on in Game Week 16 currently, as we do have the 2 o'clock kickoffs in the last 5 minutes of each game. And we also have a half-4 game today, I believe, with Brighton and Leeds, and then we have Monday Night Football with United and Bournemouth. My bench boost is indeed active, so it's going to be a big game week for me going into Game Week 17, and we'll round up some of my moves that happened before we went into Game Week 16 with my 5 free transfers. As usual, or unusually, we're not joined by Gianni this time round. Unfortunately, Gianni is quite unwell, so hopefully Gianni gets better a bit sooner, and I'll be more interactive with the chat today, and we'll try cover as many questions as you guys have possible. So do me a favor, try be as interactive in chat as you can be, and do hit the like button and subscribe to Scout if you do enjoy the content on here as usual. So with that said, let me quickly go and start with some of the games that I have seen so far. Again, the 2 o'clock kickoffs, there were a good few of them. The Sunderland one is still on, and I believe this it's an absolute banger of a game. I myself watched Spurs, unfortunately, and we were getting absolutely destroyed by Nottingham Forest, which was absolutely a terrible watch, and I have to say very, very disappointing, even for my standards and what I expect for Spurs. So do let me know in chat if you are watching any of the games, and if so, which one, and what players will you be rooting for going into Brentford and then Monday Night Football with United. But bear with me today, we'll have a lot to discuss. And there is, with my bench boost, there's a lot of different routes I can take this game week going into Game Week 17. I'm actually going to the Spurs versus Liverpool game next Saturday, which will be 2 or 3 players on my bench boost, so that's going to be fun. Unfortunately, I have no Tottenham players, or maybe fortunately enough, as Spurs are absolutely woeful in this point of time. But what have we seen from the game weeks so far? So if I take a quick look at some of the fixtures that have already occurred, of course Chelsea beat Everton 2-0, Liverpool beat Brighton 2-0, Fulham beat Burnley 3-2, and Arsenal beat Wolves 2-1. And thank you, Monkey Trousers, who says, always look forward to your Sunday streams, listen to the games on TalkSport. Very good. I can't say I enjoy watching the games on the Sunday, because usually Tottenham don't do so well, but it is always enjoyable to round up the week. Pen for Palace, Jay Traff has said in chat. I'll be keeping all eyes on that, and do let me know if there's any update on that. And Erkin says he's on 80 points, which is an absolute massive score so far in the game week. So I'm actually going to pull up the Crystal Palace score, because I'm intrigued to see what happens with this. But do let me know in chat. Anyway, just looking at some of the games, from my understanding, Chelsea got away with murder in that game with Everton. I understand that Everton had a good few chances going into the game. I don't think Chelsea were particularly good, but some massive points in there for the likes of Trevor Chalobah, Malo Gusto, and also Cole Palmer coming back with his first goal. Haaland non-captain is getting punished. Was it a Haaland penalty? It was indeed. So that is not great for us Saka captainers, but at least Saka got a big enough haul. Actually, on that note, let's move straight on to how I'm getting on in Game Week 16, so we can talk about some of my picks. Before we do that, quick thank you to the sponsor of this video, Aura Frames. Do family photos, and if you're looking for a perfect gift coming into Christmas, again, ideal, especially if you have a small time frame. But Aura have digital frames that you can change and put a lot of photos in, and it's great because it's almost like having multiple picture frames in one. The good news is for a limited time, if you use Scout at checkout, SCOUT in capitals, at auraframes.co.uk, you'll get £35 off your order. And it is fast, and it'll come before Christmas, of course. So do check it out at AURA frames.com/scout, and there's a link in the description. So thank you for Aura for helping us out on this video. So let's move on to my team for game week 16 so far. Now, it is absolutely not great. Let me show you my current score. So in front of you, I have my current score. And I need to update this because Erling Haaland has just gotten a penalty, I believe. So let me load it real quick. This is for our live FPL for anyone who was wondering. 2 seconds, lads. Live FPL is updating. So I'm currently, again, this is yet to update, 450k before the Haaland goal has been registered. But I'm actually not having, a terrible game week in particular. I'm a Spurs supporter, says Smokehouse. He says, so it's been a poor week, but points on fantasy football has been fair. Still got bench boost, and I'm interested in the vid check. That's good to hear. And again, we will have a discussion on the bench boost. Okay, that is not loading everything I need to load. So we're actually just going to talk over this. Just to know Erling Haaland has another goal on this. But I'm currently on, what's that, plus 4 points. So 60 points, I want to say, before bonus points are confirmed. Alisson on goal with a 7-pointer. Forward to back with Nkapie, Timber, Anderson, and O'Reilly. We have 3 midfield with Bruno yet to play, Saka with the armband, and Szoboszlai 3 up top with Erling Haaland, Thiago, and Raul. First off, what were my transfers going into the game week? Well, the transfers that I decided to make with 5 free transfers, just like many other managers, was bringing Mo Salah down to Bukayo Saka. We can tick that off and say that was a good move, and I was happy with it. Joe Rodon to Nkapie, which I, was hopeful until the 90th minute going into that game. And then the last move I made was bringing Mark Guy up to Raul Jimenez, which didn't quite work out. Overall, I have to say, I'm not, disappointed. I'm not happy with the game week. Again, there is still a few players to play. I feel like it's been a decent game week, but, just because a lot of the players who've done well are quite highly owned. I mean, particularly Saka, Erling Haaland, who done really well this game week, who smashed it. And then players who I kind of was really relying on, like the likes of Nkapie and Timber to get a clean sheet. All was going so well. Nkapie was actually on for max bonus points going into towards the end of that game. And again, I got cancelled out. And by the end of the game, of course, Arsenal still won the game. So it just felt like, not the result I wanted, considering Arsenal still got the win. And as a Spurs fan, of course, that's not what we like to see. Anyway, I was, quite confident going into the game with double Arsenal defence, and these things happen in football, and on paper I feel like it was still a good transfer to make. Alisson between the sticks, who, I was more than happy to hold on to. Again, I feel like he was a good hold this game week with Brighton. I know Liverpool haven't looked particularly good in defence, but I just felt like it was a good week to hold on to him, and that it was. And 7-pointer, we rarely see goalkeepers get the bonus, but Alisson, he made one decent save. Maybe it was a big chance stopped. And then we go into Tottenham away, who he'll sit on my bench going into the game week. And I'll also have Dominic Szoboszlai, who we are yet to get an update on whether or not he's going to be fit enough with an ankle injury going into this game with Tottenham. Do get your questions in chat, lads. Again, I'm going to be try to be as responsive as possible with no Gianni this time around. So it will be an open discussion, of course. What else happened in my game week? Joachim Anderson, who picked up a yellow card and conceded 2 goals to Burnley. Not ideal. I think it's a player that a lot of people are starting to get fed up of. Fulham, who are, not the worst defence, not the best defence, but just always seem to end up conceding in their games that they play. And even in a lot of the easier games where we rely on them, they've still been conceding. Dominic Szoboszlai, who filled in at right back, I don't think I could have accounted for that, and many managers would have brought him in game week 15 for game week 16, of course, and his pen share for this game in particular going down because of Mo Salah coming back into the team. So as of now, it doesn't look great with Joe Gomez picking up an injury. Now, I do believe Conor Bradley is expected to be back in training, so maybe in the future it's not too bad. Nico O'Reilly, who's currently on a clean sheet, I don't know if that Palace game has ended as of yet. Do let me know in chat if it has. But yeah, Haaland is on a 13-pointer. So I'm actually on a pretty much grey arrow on 61 points. And sitting at 485k currently in the world, which, not ideal, but going into bench boost. And a slight green arrow, I can't complain too much, and I still have 2 to play. And these players could still do damage with the likes of Bruno and Thiago. And most of my rank threats, I believe, are gone or played. So not too many worries there. Phil Foden absolutely killed me. Apologies. But overall, game week 16, I'm happy it's almost over. Again, I've picked up a decent score. It's just not been enough for me to see a big green arrow. Let's move on to how I set up for Bench Boost 17. Again, I'm really, really looking forward to it. So looking at my bench boost for game week 17, let me quickly run through it. I currently have 3 free transfers. Again, I forgot to update the graphic, so I do apologise about that. And 0.6 million in the bank. For anyone who is listening, let me run through it. So on goal, I've currently got Alisson Becker. At 3 at the back with Piero Nkapie, O'Reilly and Timber. 5 in midfield, Bruno Fernandes, Elliot Anderson, Bukayo Saka, Dominic Szoboszlai and Yankuba Minteh. 2 up top with Thiago and Erling Haaland with the captaincy armband. 4 on the bench with Dubravka, Richards, Raul and Anderson. So 3 free transfers in the bank. 0.6 million also in the bank. I'm well set up if I didn't make any moves for this team going into game week 17. Again, the bench boost is currently active. I feel like I'm in a good spot. I think my preference for bench boost in 17 really comes down to how the fixtures have landed. Tottenham look really poor. And like I said, I'll be going to this game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Double Liverpool against Tottenham, and Spurs look, I mean, toothless is fair to say going forward, which is not ideal because I'd be quite conflicted. Again, I will want Spurs to win this game, of course, and I'd be more than happy if Szoboszlai and Alisson blank. But from an FPL perspective, I think I need to make some moves, even though the team is well set up. What do I like about this team, and what do I not like? So, Dominic Szoboszlai, I feel, not that I don't necessarily like him, but with Gomez being injured, it, kind of messes up Szoboszlai's positioning. At right back, he's able to create a chance and get a chance, of course, but I just feel like there are potentially some other options that I should be looking at. Dubravka, not ideal with Bournemouth away. I feel like this would be a game where Bournemouth will score a few goals, not just one. And therefore, Dubravka on the bench is probably not great, even though he's been a good enabler this season, who we rarely see good 4 million keepers even get minutes, and he's been one who's been getting minutes. Other than that, I don't feel Raul. Watching that game versus Burnley, I actually watched Fulham Burnley, and it's usually a game where I actually wouldn't sit down and watch, but he was very, very underwhelming, I have to say. He was very, very poor. And I feel like, I don't think I can get rid of him, of course. I definitely have to look to hold on to him. And again, Nottingham Forest, even though Sean Dyche has definitely strengthened Forest since he's come in, but it's still a decent fixture for Fulham at the Cottage. So I'll be more than happy to hold on to him going into this game week. Other than that, I feel there are not too many other moves, unless I want to be greedy, that I want to make. For me, if I'm looking at my team, the obvious moves that stand out for me are bringing in the likes of a Semenyo or a Senesi, which I do quite like. The question is, how do I get there? And for me, it probably goes through a Dominic Szoboszlai. Again, just because his position is a bit messed up, and I know Salah is not going to be there next week, so Szoboszlai could still play right wing if Conor Bradley comes back fit. But I just feel like there might be an opportunity to potentially go to an Antoine Semenyo, who is only I'm only 0.3 off getting to if I do Szoboszlai to Semenyo, I believe, with Semenyo actually going down in price last night. Full time in all the 2 p.m. fixtures, Jay Traff says. He says he triple captained Saka, but he doesn't regret. I don't regret that decision next week where Haaland plays against West Ham. I don't think I'd have any regrets with a 11 pointer, I believe it was, for Saka. Again, you take your points and run there. I think for me, if I'm using the triple captain, and I assume a lot of managers will have a chip to play, whether that's in game week 17 with the bench boost or game week 18/17 with the triple captain, I feel like it will be an exciting week for managers to use a chip. I feel like it's definitely a good position to use a chip on Erling Haaland with West Ham at home. West Ham do look that poor, and I believe Villa have just beaten West Ham, if I'm not mistaken. Let me quickly double check that again, because the games are all over now. Villa versus West Ham, it ended 3-2, so another poor result for West Ham, and they just concede so many goals week in, week out. Erling Haaland could have an absolute field day going into this game. But looking at my team, Christian says he hates Arteta. Yeah, Arteta, that game was really weird. We seen 2 own goals for for Wolves, I believe it was. And the goal, I don't think Arsenal look great going forward. From an FPL point of view, a lot of their assets got subbed off before even 65 minutes. We've seen the likes of Eze get subbed off, and Gyökeres as well. And Jesus coming on, and I don't even think he got the goal. It was an OG. So, it is unusual. And yeah, I don't really like Arteta in general, but from an FPL point of view as well, he's quite perspective, because he doesn't give us what we need to know in the press conferences. And then the likes of Rice starting, and also Ben White getting an injury, and Lewis Skelly coming on in the 35th minute or 31st minute. Very frustrating for those who had him on the free hit. But taking a look at my game week 16 team, or 17 team, sorry, I have double Arsenal defence in Hincapié and also Timber. Let me know how you feel if you had double Arsenal defence. I mean, particularly these two assets going into the game. On paper, they look great, even though I feel like Everton can definitely get a goal. But what it comes down to for me is just the value that these assets currently hold going into the game week. I mean, looking at Jurrien Timber, who currently sits at a price point at 6.5 million. No clean sheet with Wolves. No clean sheet versus Villa. No clean sheet versus Brentford, Chelsea, or Tottenham. Or Sunderland. What's that? 6 games on the trot with no clean sheet. I mean, when you're paying these premium prices for these assets, now, I know Arsenal are, the best defence in the league. I don't think anyone doubts that. But when you're paying 6.5 million for an asset who doesn't necessarily have the highest attacking threat, and playing out of position and in a discombobulated Arsenal defence, it kind of makes you think, is it worth holding on to these guys? And now that they play Everton away, which isn't a bad fixture, but isn't a great one by any means, and Brighton, Villa, Bournemouth and Liverpool, from a defensive point of view, these are all teams who can score against Arsenal. Now, I know Arsenal, in these bigger games, when I say bigger games, when they play teams who are good at attacking, that's usually when we see a clean sheet, because they just nullify them and they completely shut them down. But definitely something to consider. And on that point of view, I don't mind holding Nketiah for this week. It looks like he is likely to get this game. I do know Saliba's back, and there are talks of Calafiori coming in at left back since Nketiah played there. But I feel like Hincapié is a decent asset, and I feel like Arteta will think the same. And he's played quite well in my opinion. So fortunately enough, got DEFCON last game week, and I don't think I have too many worries going into this game. What would I do then if I decided that the value in Timber wasn't there for me? What I would like to do, and I think this is a good move. Let me pull it up right now. So in front of you, I have the FPL page. And what we'll do is we'll take a look at the 15 players I am bench boosting. This time around, it is actually a really nice view to view all my 15 players, because again, I will be getting points from all of them. 3 free transfers in the bank, like I said, and 0.6 million. What could I do? So, if I move Jurrien Timber, who I have a lot of value tied up in, I bought him for, 5.8 million. I have 0.4 almost built up in him. Therefore, I don't know if it's actually worth me selling Timber, because again, I'm in a different probably pool of people where I actually just have value tied up in them. But let's just say I sold them, and I think I actually have 6.3 selling value on Timber. I think the one I'd like to go for, again, it'd be interesting to see if he plays, and he got a price drop tonight with a difference of, what is that, 1.6 million almost now between Senesi and Jurrien Timber. But it would be to do Jurrien Timber down to a Senesi. And again, it lets me kind of change my structure around and use that 1.8 million. And I can bring Szoboszlai or Jan Kuba depending on Szoboszlai's fitness, but up to and this is where I have a decision to make. Antoine Semenyo at 7.5 million, which I think is a very, very fair price at this current point in time for Semenyo. Or I could do a Matheus Cunha, which I do really like. Again, I just feel like Semenyo probably comes in at more value. But when we look a little bit later down the line for a Matheus Cunha, who I'll pull up now, he's got the likes of a Bournemouth at home, he plays Monday night. But in 17 plays Villa and Newcastle, which are not great fixtures. But then he goes to play Wolves at home, Leeds away, Burnley away, which are 3 very nice fixtures. And with the likes of Mbeumo going away, Kuna is expected to be largely involved in what United are going to do if they are going to remain a decent attack going forward. Now that's not to say they are, with the likes of Amad Diallo missing out for United come game week 17, and also Brian Mbeumo, but someone has to pick up the pieces for United. And to be honest, I'd be quite confident in a player like Kuna, who has done quite well in previous seasons for the likes of Wolves in an attack where you wouldn't necessarily call him a good one. Again, like I said, the one I fancy is Antoine Semenyo. Now, that's for two reasons. It's the opening fixture of Burnley at home this game week, which I think is, of course, amazing. He has dropped in price to 7.5 million. I think this is great, a great opportunity to actually get on Semenyo. And also, after Burnley, in 16 he's got Brentford, in 18 he's got Brentford, in 19 he's got Chelsea, and in 20 he's got Arsenal. Now, Burnley and Brentford, two great fixtures. Chelsea and Arsenal, two very difficult fixtures. But with the one game a week for Bournemouth, I think I'm more inclined to, go to a Semenyo slash Acuna rather than moving to someone who probably has a bit more congestion. And I don't think there are too many options, whether that's for Newcastle or even Arsenal and Chelsea, that I would fancy rather than Semenyo at that price point. And I think at that price point, there's not too many assets that I'd be, head over shoulders to get. I think the only one who stands out, who's got another goal this game week, is Phil Foden. But I think at this point and his price, I think I just have to, make my bed and move on, especially on a bench boost where I just can't stretch the funds to go there. Happy at first with Timber, doubtful but played. Felt unlucky as Arsenal nearly got a clean sheet and got Raya and Saka also. Yeah, it is, quite frustrating, I want to say, with the likes of the Arsenal assets going in to that Wolves game. Not much you can do about that, but I mean, I think I have to hold on to both of them going into Everton. But if I were to get rid of Jurriën Timber, who I actually don't mind doing this game week, again, Senesi, I feel at 4.9 in comparison to Timber, has some very, very high upside with the likes of Burnley at home this game week. It would also allow me 0.9 million in the bank to go from a Dubravka up to a Petrovic. Now, I feel like this is really aggressive. Again, it means doubling up on the Bournemouth defence going into bench boost 17, but if I look at that team as a whole, very strong, and it means I'll have a bench of Alisson, Anderson, Richards, and also Raul. So that's one iteration I could do with my 3 free transfers if I want to really stack up on attacking the game week. The other option I look at, and to be honest, I don't quite mind it, is doing, again, I've really played around with this, but doing Szoboszlai up to a Semenyo again, and actually just trying to make the 0.3 million from Anderson. So Elliot Anderson actually didn't hit DEFCON versus Spurs this time around, which was unusual. Again, he seems to have forgotten to get DEFCON in recent weeks, but it means actually being a bit aggressive and going to a 5 million and below option. Now, that could be, I think the one that stands out for me is a Wafer or a Lafie. Now, again, Lafie is an interesting one because he's on penalties. Sunderland look quite good, and I believe they just beat Newcastle, if I'm not mistaken. Sunderland Newcastle. Yeah, they beat Newcastle 1-0. Again, apologies, the stream was started 5 minutes before the games ended, so I just wanted to clarify. But, Sunderland are absolutely flying. At home win against rivals will do Sunderland a world of good. And if I bring in Lafie, I could even play him with Leeds at home next game week. And, it is quite nice to have an 8 attacker like Lafie on the bench who's on penalties for Sunderland, I believe. And, he gets 90 minutes week in, week out. And he has some, decent attacking threat. So I feel like I could go from an Anderson to Lafie. It does two things. It enables me Semenyo. Also bags me 0.4 million in the bank. And, he's a decent attacking threat. The other one is Wafer. Now, he's been on and off getting DEFCON. 11 DEFCON versus Liverpool, 17 versus Villa, 25 versus Nottingham Forest, 12, 11, 13, 16 and 13 versus Newcastle, United, Leeds and Palace. He's a man who can get DEFCON, but he plays against Sunderland, which will be a tough game for Brighton, of course. But he's definitely one I could go for, rather than going from an Anderson. Again, I'll be fairly confident he gets a start as well. It looks like he's got 8 starts in the last in the last few games since he starting for Brighton. And again, decent fixture for Sunderland. He doesn't provide, much or significant attacking threat. Looking at the last two, 0.32 versus Liverpool, which is actually quite higher than I would have anticipated, and 0.56 versus West Ham, which is decent for a 4.9 asset who seems to be quite good at getting DEFCON. So he's also one on the radar. I'm intrigued to see what you guys think. Am I missing anyone? I feel like those are the two standouts for me. Wafer and also Lefi. I think Lefi probably, leads the line for me in terms of 4.9 million assets and under. The other one I could do is Tyler Adams, doubling up on Bournemouth attack. Again, when I look at his minutes, it looks quite good, but he has just been a bit inconsistent as an asset in general, and you don't know if he's definitely going to start this game with Burnley at home. And I think he had one really poor performance. I don't know which one it was, but he got hooked and it was very, very poor. So I don't know if I fancy an Adams, but a Scott is also a one to consider. Other than that, I don't think there are too many other options that I'm missing out here. Again, we have a Lewis Miley, but he played 90 minutes versus Sunderland, benching Joe Wellington, which I thought was interesting, but just doesn't provide too much. I know he can get DEFCON in the odd game, but doesn't look consistent enough for me to probably go there. So let's pencil in a Lefi currently, and that leaves us with 0.1 million in the bank. My only issue with going with Lefi and also Semenyo is that I've got Dubravka on the bench boost. Bringing in a Bournemouth attacker to bench boost against a goalkeeper who's going to be on my bench, it doesn't sound great. And that's why I kind of fancy going down the Petrovic route if I can. And to be honest, it would be ideal if I could somehow get Petrovic and bring Anderson down to a playing 4.5, but I just don't think that is possible. So if I look here at the 4.5 options, again, this is really clutching at straws. But I think the only ones who are likely to get minutes are Miley, Potts and a King. Andrew Santos does get the odd game, but I think it is probably unlikely that he starts in game week 17 versus Newcastle away. And even if he did, not a great fixture. So yeah, just looking at the 4.5, I mean, there's no one here unless there's been a big injury that I've missed out on. And I think Potts is probably the only one who's going to get consistent minutes. But even him, he plays against City away, and he did get an assist versus Villa. But definitely would be great if I could somehow get to an asset who's going to get minutes in this game week. I don't think that's a good possibility for my own team though. So it is probably going to be Semenyo and Lefi. Again, I really do fancy that. I think that's probably the best iteration that I could do for my own team. Anderson, who's been a slight bit underwhelming. Is the KDH injury serious? Would you who would be your ideal replacement? Yeah, I think the KDH one was indeed a hamstring one, and I would say he's a sell. Coming off after 20 minutes is definitely not a good sign, and I would definitely sell him. Looking at some of the price points again, what price exactly is KDH? I know we got a lot of price rises in recent weeks and it's hard to keep up with. Let me quickly pull up Kieran Dewsbury Hall. He's currently 5.1 million, so yeah, you're shopping around the same price, and I feel like Lefi is probably the obvious one. Again, there are not many great options. Other than that, I probably would still go to an Anderson if you have the extra funds, but Lefi, in a Sunderland team who are firing, if he's an 8 attacker, I don't mind that at all. And to be honest, at that price point, there are not too many great options. Let me know in chat what you would do in my position. Again, trying to set up the bench boost and pick up as many points as I can going into game week 17. I think that's probably the best iteration. Now, what are you going to do with Raul? I'm going to hold on to him for the time being. I don't think I have any reason to get rid of him ahead of Forest. I still think as long as his minutes are good, I'm happy to hold on to him. I did look at potentially bringing in a striker as a replacement for Raul, but again, if I look at the options at that 7 million under, very little there. Sure, I could get a Danny Welbeck who got a rest in the week, but again, you just don't know for certain if he's going to start. You'd imagine he will. Isidore, who I don't fancy. A Wilson, who I also don't fancy, again plays against City, so that's an absolute avoid. And then you have the likes of a Strand Larson, who completely off it. Wolves just look so poor. Even though he is starting games, he's getting subbed early. I think the only one that I could be somewhat tempted would be Cole Mwani, who seems to be part of a starting Spurs team, but after a really poor result, I mean, I just don't think I could go there. And with Liverpool at home, who, is a tough game, but you won't be surprised to see Spurs score in that game. And again, like I said, I will be at it, so it would be nice to be able to cheer on something. What would my expectations, Bad Panda is asking, on a bench boost? Would 16 points be okay? I would be happy with more than 14 points. I think 14 points I would consider a success. Anything less than 14, I'd be disappointed. Sunderland defence is good, but I'd be surprised if they score a 1+ goal against anyone. I agree, Peter. I think they haven't been particularly great offensively, but in a game like Brighton, who I think matched them in terms of strength, I feel like these are the games where we could potentially see some goals. This will be a game Sunderland won't back down from, I don't think, because again, they've just been so good. So I do wonder, from a matchup perspective, is it a good game to potentially see some goals? And if so, hopefully Lafille can be involved in them if I do go down that route. I think if we look at the macro lens of my team, bringing in Lafille and Semenyo is quite good. Again, like I said, Brentford for Semenyo next week, and also Lafille plays against Leeds at home, which would be another big game for Sunderland. And then I can then eventually, in 18 down the line, bring Raul down to a marquee, and then bring up a Yankuba Minta spot to the likes of Acuna if I still fancy him, or any other options in that price band. I think Kuna leads the line for me. Other than that, I think I'm fairly decently set up for game week 17. Again, do put your questions in the chat. What are your thoughts, Dave asks, about Volamatic to Ekitike? Ekitike is one of the players that I was probably the highest on going into game week. In my own on my own channel, for my transfer targets video, I actually spoke about how I really fancied Ekitike going into the game week. Again, with Isaac having a knock midweek, with Mo Salah looking like he's out of the picture, and with Cody Gakpo out of the team, Ekitike is just one of those players who plays with a lot of arrogance, and I think it's from an FPL point of view, that's what we look for. He is very arrogant, I would say, as a footballer, and you're rightly so. He's class. On first sight he's shooting, and he's quite clinical in my eyes. And as long as he's getting the minutes for Liverpool, he will be quite high on my radar. The one thing I would say is, we're getting to a point in the season where strikers, it looks like we formed a template with the likes of a Thiago and a Haaland. Unless you go to a triple striker lineup and you get rid of a Thiago, it's quite hard to fit in Thiago, Haaland and a Ekitike, because how much value the midfielders hold. And I just feel like we're in a stage where a lot of people have a Foden, Bruno and a Saka. They're three pricey midfielders, so it's quite hard to also fit in an Ekitike unless you actually look at getting rid of a Thiago, which I would be open to doing after game week 17, after Thiago plays against Wolves. Again, FPL is just about timing, and I feel like after game week 17 he's probably a sell. Bournemouth at home, Tottenham at home, and Everton away. Now, again, I'm looking at these fixtures, and I'm not saying he's definitely a sell. Like, you could more than happily hold on to him. And he's just been a player who's been great. But again, he's not going to get penalties every single week after scoring 6 penalties so far. And after these fixtures, now he's coming in at a respectable price at 7.1. I feel like you can look elsewhere. One who I feel will be also popular, along with Hugo Ekitike, will probably be Jared Bowen. Now, Jared Bowen comes in at 7.5. A lot of price drops so far this season, but he has great fixtures after game week 17. Fulham at home, Brighton at home, Wolves away, Nottingham Forest at home, Tottenham away, and a player on decent form. 5 points versus United, 9 versus Brighton, 6 versus Villa. A player who can also get DEFCON. Didn't do it in the last few, but done it against Bournemouth, which is always an extra bonus. It means he tries hard, and he's a player who gets 90 minutes every single week. So Brentford are good at home, Derek, I agree, but I don't think Thiago has been exactly exhilarating from an open play perspective. Sure, he's picked up the points in recent weeks, but we have to look at, the wider lens of things. And even though he has been returning, does that mean he's going to continue it? I'm unsure. At 7.1 million, I feel like you could sell him. Yeah, Mukiele is an absolute legend this season. Big haul for Mukiele. I actually don't know how many points he's ended on. Let me know in chat how many points you've ended up on getting this game week. I'm intrigued. I'm currently on, let me refresh it, 61 points. Which, I'm more than happy with, to be honest, at this point. Let me look at Mukiele. How many points did he bag this game week? Mukiele ended the game week on 8 points. Did he get max bonus? Bonus. I'm actually unsure if he got bonus points. Let me know in chat. But massive haul for Mukiele owners again. Nick Volamatic coming up with an OG. Very unfortunate if you did hold on to him. Other than that, lads, I am very happy with my current side. Again, I know a lot of people will either be using the triple captain or the bench boost this week, but I feel like it could be a high upside week for myself with a lot of players that I don't think people own. Again, Elliot Anderson is not one that many people own. His foundation, hopefully going into this game week, will be a 4-pointer with Defcon. Jan Kuba-Minta, who has been really struggling in my team. Szoboszlai as well, who I can't wait to sell, but I'll be hoping for a Raul. If something comes from Raul, my Szoboszlai replacement, Minta and Anderson, I think I'll be flying in game week 17. If not, I feel like an Arsenal defender, O'Reilly, Fernandez, Thiago Haaland, these are quite highly owned players, and I won't be expecting too much from them because they're so highly owned. I believe Saka this game week, due to captaincy, was 80% effective ownership. Haaland, who was 150, and an Arsenal defender who was around 60 this game week around my rank. So I'm looking forward to the game week. 78 without Erling, Ministry says. That's massive. 57 with 3 left, says Ollie. 64 with 3 to play, says Kevin. 73 with bench boost, Bad Panda says. 72 with 2 to play, says James. And Peter says 60 with Bruno Fernandes captain to go, and Thiago. That is absolutely massive. Foden got Defcon. I'm actually not sure if he did. Let me pull that up and check. I didn't see how the game ended. If Foden got Defcon, it's been an absolute terrible week for myself, because again, Foden coming in at 8.7, he didn't know. 12 Defcon versus Crystal Palace. How does he keep doing it, lads? I actually don't know. He's been so inconsistent with it. 2 versus Leeds, 3 versus Sunderland, and then massive scores versus Crystal Palace. And Fulham with Defcon. Another double-digit haul. Fair play to the Foden owners. Again, absolutely killing me this season, considering he's so highly owned each game week at this point in the season. I'm just hoping that down the line, when I eventually go to a Semenyo or whoever that position will be, I can hopefully somewhat clutch some points. Now, it's going to be a big ask because Foden plays against West Ham in game week 17, but again, at a 1.2 million budget difference, I'll be quite hopeful. Razor says 67 with 2 to remain. Ban says 71, he's doing great, and Markham says 72 with 2 to play. Triple captain on Ekitike. That is absolutely beautiful, and I love that for you, Markham. There's nothing better than a massive triple captaincy return. Fair play. And do let me know in chat if you are using a chip in game week 17. It's going to be interesting to see the chip usage going into this game week. But we are going to round up the stream there, lads. Again, I do apologise, no Gianni, and probably less to cover, as there is less of discussion when there's only one of us doing the solo streams. But hopefully you've picked up something from my own team going into game week 17. Again, I am using the bench boost, and do keep an eye on what I do going into game week 17. And if you want to keep an eye on my own content, do check out my team selection video that will be coming on my own channel, and also my transfer plans. So I am looking forward to using the bench boost. Again, it's a chip that has not done me too well in recent seasons, but again, I feel like I am decently set up going into game week 17. So I'm going to round up the video there, lads. Do hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, do check out Aura and use code SCOUT. If you are enjoying these videos, do let me know on my own channel and in the comment section of this one. So I'm going to leave it there, lads, and as usual, I will see you in the next.